Let me tell you a quick story. Warren Buffett wasn't always the GOAT of investing. When he was 19, he stumbled across this book, The Intelligent Investor by Benjamin Graham. He said it changed his life. At the time, Buffett was doing what most beginners do, chasing hot stocks, watching tickers, trying to time the market, that I think I can beat everyone else phase. But Graham's book hit him with a totally different mindset. It wasn't about being a genius or predicting the future. It was about having a system, staying rational, controlling your emotions when the market loses its mind. And that stuck with him. He called it the best investing book ever written, and he built his entire fortune on the principles inside it. Oh, and if you missed part 1, you'll still follow everything in this video, no problem. But I highly recommend watching it after this. That's where we talked about all the core mindset stuff every investor needs to get right first. Today though, we're moving into the more practical lessons, things you can actually start doing with your money right now. Lesson 1, intrinsic value. I know that sounds like something a finance professor would write on a chalkboard, but this one concept can seriously change how you look at stocks forever. So what is intrinsic value? It's basically asking, what is this company really worth if you stripped away all the hype, noise, and flashing charts? Like, not what it's trading at on Robinhood right now, but what it's actually worth underneath the hood, based on its earnings, its growth, and the real numbers. Imagine you walk into a store and see a pair of sneakers for $300. But when you look closer, they're just basic materials, made in the same factory as the $60 ones. That's price, not value. Now imagine another pair that's legit durable, crazy comfortable, made to last years, and it's selling for $90. That's value. That's what we're after. That's what Graham was doing in the 1930s and 40s. He was digging through balance sheets, looking for companies trading at less than their cash value. Like the company could shut down tomorrow, sell its inventory and cash, and you'd make a profit as a shareholder. These were called net nets, stocks selling for less than their net current asset value. And when the market bounced back, some of those stocks went up 50%, 100%, or even more. Now here's where things get actually practical. Graham didn't just talk theory. He gave us a super simple formula to help figure out what a stock might really be worth. Here it is. Intrinsic value equals EPS times 8.5 plus 2G. Now hang on, don't let the math scare you. This is easier than it looks. EPS just means earnings per share, like how much profit the company makes for each share you own. And G is just the percent you think the company will grow every year. Let's say a company earns $4 per share, and you expect it to grow 5% a year. You'd plug it in like this. 4 times 8.5 plus 2 times 5, that's 4 times 18.5, which gives you $74. So if that stock is trading at $50, you might have found a bargain. If it's going for $100, it could be overpriced. Now, does this still work today? Yes and no. The idea still works, but the formula needs a reality check. Interest rates are lower today than when Graham wrote this, and markets are a little more efficient. So, while it's a great tool for filtering out overhyped stocks, you gotta adjust your expectations and use it as a guideline, not a magic wand. Also, net stocks are super rare today. The market moves fast and info spreads quicker. But you can still find companies trading below what they're really worth. It just takes a little digging and patience. Think of it like bargain hunting at an outlet mall instead of a yard sale. Now, here's what not to do. Don't just plug numbers into that formula and blindly hit buy. That's not investing. If you overestimate growth or use some wild guess for EPS, you'll end up convincing yourself that garbage stocks are gold. Also, don't chase stocks just because they're cheap. Graham warned about cigar butt investing, buying companies that are on their last puff just because they're cheap. That works once in a while, but if the business is dying, it doesn't matter how cheap it looks, it's still trash. Buffett figured this out later. He went from buying cheap stuff to buying quality stuff, even if it wasn't at a huge discount. He bought Coca-Cola, Apple, American Express, companies with pricing power, brand loyalty, and long-term staying power. His mindset shifted from buying at a bargain to owning something great for a long time. So always ask, what is this business really worth? Use the formula, but don't worship it. Don't fall for cheap if the business sucks. Lesson 2, follow the numbers. So now that we've talked about figuring out what a stock is really worth, let's talk about something just as important, how to tell if a company is actually solid. Because here's the deal, a stock might look cheap, but if the company behind it is a financial mess, it's like buying a car that looks shiny but has no engine. You don't want that. You want to look under the hood. Graham once found a company called Northern Pipeline. But when he looked at the company's balance sheet, he saw something crazy. They were sitting on a pile of cash, like more cash than the company was even worth in the market. Wall Street totally missed it, but Graham saw the numbers, realized it was undervalued, and made a killing. That's the power of just reading the numbers a little deeper. Now, I'm not saying you need to be some finance nerd who loves spreadsheets. You just need to know a few simple things to check. Trust me, it's easier than it sounds. So what should you look for? Start with these 3 simple checks. 1. Debt to equity under 0.5. This one's big. It means the company isn't loaded up with debt. A company with low debt can survive hard times. One with too much, one bad quarter, and it's game over. Take 2008, for example. Lehman Brothers was buried in debt, and it crashed. But Johnson & Johnson, they didn't know much, had a solid business, and kept moving forward just fine. 2. P/E ratio under 15. This tells you if the stock is expensive compared to what it earns. If it's too high, you might be overpaying. Under 15 is usually fair for most companies. 3. P/B ratio under 1.5. This compares the stock price to the company's actual assets. If it's too high, you're paying way more than the company's worth on paper. Think of it like this. You're buying a house. Would you pay $500,000 for a house that's only worth $300,000 on paper? Same idea here. These 3 filters alone can help you dodge a ton of bad investments. It's like a quick checklist. Doesn't take long, and it instantly tells you if something feels off. Lesson 3. Past performance is not equal to future profits. And here's where a lot of people mess up. Like, big time. Just because a stock did great last year doesn't mean it's going to keep climbing. I know seems obvious, right? But you'd be shocked how many people fall for this trap. Oh, this stock is up 200%, I better buy it before it goes higher. And then, it tanks. This is what Graham was warning about. Let me give you a classic case, the Nifty 50. Back in the 1970s, these were the can't-lose stocks. Big names like Polaroid, Xerox, Avon. Wall Street was obsessed. Everyone said, these are safe. You can buy at any price and hold forever. Guess what happened? Some of those companies crashed 90%. A lot of people lost everything because they thought past performance meant future safety. Because hype doesn't last. Markets change. What worked last year might flop the next. Now, this doesn't mean you should ignore good companies. It just means don't buy based only on past charts or popularity. That's momentum chasing, not value investing. Graham called this the mutual fund fallacy. He said top-performing funds often fall back to average. Basically, the hotter something gets, the more likely it's already overpriced. So here's the golden rule. Don't chase winners just because they've been winning. Always come back to the basics. Intrinsic value, solid financials, reasonable price. Because investing isn't about what happened yesterday, it's about what's likely tomorrow. Lesson 4. Inflation will eat you alive. Now it's time for some real talk. There's something quietly stealing your money every single day, and no one sends you a warning. It's called inflation, and it's real. It's sneaky, and it's dangerous if you don't respect it. Let me show you how real this is. Back in the year 2000, a McDonald's Big Mac cost around $2.50. Now here's where it hits hard. Let's say you took that $2.50 in 2000 and said, I'm going to be smart and save this. You drop it into a basic savings account that earns around 1% interest per year. That's actually better than most bank rates today, by the way. Fast forward 25 years, you've got about $3.50. Awesome. Except the Big Mac now costs $5.50. So after all that saving, all that time, you still can't afford the same burger you could have bought back then. That's what inflation does. It eats your money alive slowly, quietly, and without mercy. Now imagine this happening to your entire life savings. You worked hard for that money. You saved. But if it just sits in a low-interest account, it's literally shrinking in value. And it's happened before. Back in the 1970s, inflation got wild. They called it stagflation. The economy was crawling, unemployment was high, and prices were shooting up like crazy. People who thought their money was safe in bonds lost over 40% of their real value. Imagine having $100,000 saved up and waking up to it being worth $60,000 in buying power. So how do you protect yourself? Graham didn't fight inflation by stuffing cash under a mattress. He prepared for it. He consistently kept 20 to 30% of his portfolio in assets that tended to rise alongside inflation, things that held their value when prices climbed, like dividend-paying stocks. These companies literally send you money every few months just for holding their stock. And the good ones? They increase that payout every year. So your income grows right along with inflation. REITs. These are real estate investment trusts. You're not buying a house. You're just buying a little piece of properties like apartments or malls. And when rent prices go up, you earn more too. Tips. Treasury inflation-protected securities. It sounds boring, but they're built to rise when inflation rises. If you don't take inflation seriously, it will quietly eat your money year after year. You won't feel it today, but you'll definitely feel it later. So, is your money working hard enough to buy a Big Mac in 10 years? Or is it just sitting there, getting soggy like old fries? Lesson 5. Diversification. Okay, quick question. If someone gave you one egg, would you carry it across a bumpy road in a paper bag? No? Then why are you putting your whole portfolio in one stock? I get it. You love Tesla, or Apple, or maybe some random AI startup your cousin told you about at a wedding. Benjamin Graham was super clear about this. He believed in diversification, which is just a fancy word for don't put all your eggs in one basket because, well, baskets break. Graham recommended holding 10 to 30 different stocks across different industries. That way, if one crashes, the others can keep you afloat. It's like wearing a seatbelt and having airbags. Safety layered on safety. Let me show you how this plays out. Imagine you owned just one stock in 2008, say Lehman Brothers, gone overnight. Your portfolio's toast. But if you had a mix, some healthcare, some consumer staples, some tech, you'd survive that storm and maybe even pick up some great deals while everyone else was panicking. Now I get it. Picking 30 stocks sounds exhausting. That's why today's version of Graham's basket can be even simpler. You can just grab index funds, something like VTI. That's the total US stock market in one fund. BND, a mix of bonds for stability. Together, that's basically a modern Graham-style 60-40 portfolio. Solid, boring, and historically tough to beat. Also, Jason Zweig, who updated The Intelligent Investor, points out that most active investors actually lose to these basic index funds over time, like 80% of them. So why try to outsmart the system when you can just ride with it? And remember, loving a stock is fine. Marrying it is not. Lesson 6. Have a real plan, then stick to it. Okay, so it's early 2020. COVID's hitting hard. The stock market is tanking. It feels like the whole financial system is just collapsing. Everyone's panicking. And I get this call from my buddy Jake. He's freaking out. Dude, I'm losing money every day. Tesla's down. Even my safe stocks are red. Should I just sell everything? Should I go all cash, crypto, buy a bunker? I said, chill. What's your plan? And he goes, I don't have one. There it is. That's exactly why people lose money, because they didn't know what to do when things went sideways. Benjamin Graham had a name for this. A sound investment policy. A fancy way of saying, you need a plan before you touch your money. Buffett lives by this. He's got rules, guardrails. He doesn't wait for the chaos to figure things out. He knows how he'll react before it happens. Let me show you what that looks like in real life. Here's a simple plan you could write down right now. If a stock drops, I don't sell unless the company itself is broken. I invest in index funds like VTI for 60% of my portfolio, bonds for 30%, and I rebalance once a year. No buying anything I saw trending on TikTok or Reddit without researching it first. That's it. It doesn't need to be complex. Because when the next crash hits, and it will, your emotions are going to freak out. But your plan? That's the calm, rational version of you whispering, we already decided what to do. Back to my buddy Jake. I helped him write his first real investing plan. Just a few lines in his notes app. He stuck to it, didn't sell during the panic. And by the end of 2021, he was up big, because he didn't do anything stupid. So what's your plan? How will you act when stocks crash 20%? What will you not do when hype kicks in? Write it, stick to it, and don't let emotions make decisions your future self's gonna regret. Okay, so we've covered a lot, right? And if you saw part 1, you know we already covered the mindset and big ideas behind all of this. But now let's bring it home with one final lesson that ties it all together. So what actually makes someone an intelligent investor? I mean, that's literally the title of the book, right? It's not being the smartest person in the room. It's not about picking the next Tesla. It's not tracking charts like a Wall Street hacker with 5 monitors and a Red Bull addiction. No, Benjamin Graham had a totally different definition, and it's kind of refreshing. He said the intelligent investor is a realist who sells to optimists and buys from pessimists. Being intelligent isn't about predicting the future. It's about staying sane when everyone else is losing their minds. An intelligent investor doesn't react emotionally. They act rationally. They're not perfect. They're not psychic. They just don't do dumb stuff when things get scary. Here's another way to think about it. The market is basically a roller coaster. It goes up, it drops hard, it loops around unexpectedly. The smart investor isn't the one who screams and jumps off mid-ride. It's the one who just keeps their seatbelt on and lets the ride finish. And you know who nailed that approach? Warren Buffett. He literally built his fortune on not panicking. When the dot-com bubble was raging, he stayed out of the madness. When the 2008 crash hit, he didn't run. He bought more. So if you're watching this right now and thinking, okay, how do I become an intelligent investor? Start here. Have a simple plan. Stick to it. Don't let headlines control your emotions. And when everyone's yelling sell, ask yourself, would Benjamin Graham or Warren Buffett freak out right now? Probably not. So be that person, the one who plays the long game. That's what it really means to be an intelligent investor. If you haven't seen part 1 yet, seriously, go watch it right now. We broke down the core principles from The Intelligent Investor that lay the foundation for everything we just talked about. You don't want to miss it.